What's the purpose of education?
I think the purpose of education is to educate and not indoctrinate.
So children have both the know-how, general knowledge, and also kind of self-awareness and character.
I was always aware that these are not my children.
I would agree that I think it needs to be a collaborative effort. As a student myself, I think that that's incredibly important because our perspectives need to be heard as well.
Teachers are temporary caretakers.
And if you say that as a teacher, especially, you could be labeled as homophobic. I think as a teacher, I feel like I've learned the most in my life as a teacher, like more so than in college.
I believe that we have to recontextualize the way that we approach education as a society, and specifically how we've kind of started to use education as a political tool. At its core, education serves society.
I'm Mina Durson, and we're going to talk about education today. Obviously, we're not going to be able to represent every single opinion out there when it comes to education, but we are really thankful for your time and for your perspectives. So let's just start really broadly. What's the purpose of education?
I think the purpose of education is twofold. One, to help build and support the individual, but also help build and support society as a whole, because we as a society depend on and need education for society to work.
I think the purpose of education is to educate and not indoctrinate.
I think that it has to be a mix of the skills, memorizing the formulas, understanding the world around you, but then also what to do with it.
And just to go off that, the idea that education, you have to balance the importance of memorizing the quadratic formula while simultaneously addressing social and political issues respectively. So children have both the know-how, general knowledge, and also kind of self-awareness and character, so they're able to develop their own opinions.
When we talk about who's doing the educating, who should decide what's being taught?
Parents. As a public school teacher 15 years, I was always aware that these are not my children.
I'm here in America, ranging back to the early 1900s. Plenty of Supreme Court cases have ruled in that favor that it is the parents' right, ultimately, to decide a child's education, medical needs, etc.
I would agree that I think it needs to be a collaborative effort. The way that we decide curriculum in Texas is that work groups comprised of community members, educators, parents, even in some cases students and public service officials come together to draft curriculum plans. So I think that kind of format can be really effective because it also empowers students to become involved in the fate of their education. And as a student myself, I think that that's incredibly important because our perspectives need to be heard as well.
But unfortunately, what we've seen recently is that parents' voices have been demonized in this process. You've seen parents who've criticized local school boards labeled terrorists simply for caring about the quality of their education that their child is receiving. These teachers are temporary caretakers.
There's a lot of parents in America that are Christian or, they believe in two genders, gender binary. And if you say that as a teacher, especially, you could be labeled as homophobic. So there isn't this unbiased classroom because there's one side that can't really be, as loud as the other side without risk of, losing our jobs even.
Is that idea of someone sees me and they go, oh, you're one of those that teach that there's 72 different types of gender. My students do not know this because it doesn't come up because I'm a learning specialist and it's my job to educate and teach a curriculum, right? Now, if I'm asked directly by a parent or if there's confusion, oh, why do you wear makeup? Same reason why girls do, because it's fun for me. It doesn't need to be this very controversial, they're gonna go home and they're gonna turn into a gender fluid and they're gonna think there's 72 genders.
Teachers are supposed to teach reading, math, science, the things that are actually going to make them contributing members of society. Answering a child's questions about whether or not men or women should be wearing makeup or not is, I don't think, within that realm.
Okay, so you said science, right? We're talking about human anatomy and biology here. So a child says, I thought boys could not wear makeup, with any opinion.
But it's in no way scientific, or it's a perception or an opinion, but it's in no way scientific.
I think that a lot of parents, and if you look at homeschool data, like my friend Phil right here, he's got 7 kids and he's homeschooling them all. And actually homeschool kids are turning out really well.
I think you bring up a lot of very valid points, but I have to say, and I just want your opinion on this, I would never homeschool my own kids. And I want my kids to be smarter than me, than I ever was. How am I going to have a child that is smarter and does better than I do if I'm their only teacher?
You grow alongside your child. I think as a teacher, I feel like I've learned the most in my life as a teacher, like more so than in college. And, so parents becoming teachers is actually good for them as well.
What do you think should be taught about gender identity in school? What do you think is being taught?
I want to go back to something you were saying earlier that's related to this about you're seeing trends. And I am too, right? Last semester, when I was teaching, I had a trans kid in every classroom. And I was like, whoa, when I started teaching,
it was one in school.
There was none. Historically speaking, a disproportionate number of kids who are gay, who are trans, who are any of the LGBTQI, fill in the letters, right? Didn't live to see adulthood. Maybe that's part of why we don't have an older generation of trans adults.
I think should be taught in sex ed.
I think it should be health education. I taught middle school and high school, and they started giving it to my students in 7th grade, and I have students come back to me traumatized because I think sex ed has gone away from what it was.
I think a huge thing that's missing in education in the schools when it comes to sex ed is consent.
Yes.
You know, that's not being taught at all.
Some of you said it wasn't like this when you were kids. 20 years ago, school was really different. Maybe you couldn't even imagine having some of these conversations.
I believe that we have to recontextualize the way that we approach education as a society, and specifically how we've kind of started to use education as a political tool. At its core, education serves society. It needs to be a collaborative effort, because if education serves society, society should be investing in education.
We as adults have a lot of work to do, and it's both at kitchen tables and school boards and forums like this.
We just need to stop chasing all of these like boogeymans that we are just like kind of seeing in the media just to polarize everybody and make everybody so angry.